Hello and welcome to IELTS Cast. Today I'm speaking with Hoi, an IELTS candidate from Hong Kong. Hoi recently took his IELTS and scored an overall of 7.5, and that was on the general exam. He scored a band 8 in listening, a band 7.5 in both reading and speaking, and a band 6.5 on his writing. Hi, Hoi, and welcome to IELTS Cast.
Hi, Ryan. How are you?
Good. Now, as we were talking before we started this recording, Hoi, you were telling me a little bit about your relationship to the language, to international travel. So why don't we start with talking about why you took the IELTS?
Yeah. So I came here to London since 1.5 years ago, and I got a job, so they could sponsor my visa, but to get a UK work permit, you've got to have IELTS test result. So that's why I took this test.
I see, and that explains why you took the general.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Now, so Hoi, you're currently in London, and you've been there for about 2 years. You were telling me that you've traveled everywhere, it sounds like. I mean, you spent time in the US, and maybe we can just share with everybody, you were 2 years, is that right, in total in the US, in various cities?
Yeah, in the US, almost 2 years.
Right, and so now you're almost 2 years in the UK, you had spent 7 years in Japan, and I imagine in Hong Kong you grew up with English in your household?
No, absolutely Chinese.
Okay, but you studied English at school, I imagine?
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's start by going through a couple of the tips. Now, Hoi has provided me with this very thorough list of ideas and tips and experiences that he had with the IELTS. So he and I are going to go through these one by one, and he's going to elaborate a little bit upon how they can help people that are listening to this do better in their IELTS. There are a couple of general things that you had mentioned you wanted to share. Do you want to elaborate upon those?
Yeah, so bring a pen, more than one, maybe bring some pens and some pencils and rubber, although they will provide you some pencils and rubber if you don't have one. And also bring a ruler that will help you speed up your reading. And I will explain that while we are discussing the reading section later. And also bring an identification, whatever you use, maybe your passport, driving license, whatsoever. So, and also a letter of correspondence. They will send you an admission letter for the exam. So don't forget that. I suggest don't bring water, otherwise it will allure you to drink too much water, and probably, you have to take a toilet break, and then that would take your time. And
yeah, well, that's an interesting thing you and I were talking about before the recording started. That perhaps some people don't know is that you're not really given bathroom breaks, and if you take a bathroom break, it cuts into the time that you use on the exam.
Yeah. You have to use your own exam time. You are not allowed to go to visit the bathroom while they, take away your test papers or doing their announcement. Absolutely no. You have to, use the time while you are doing your test to visit the toilet.
Okay, and now without going into graphic detail, you had this very experience on your writing exam, didn't you?
Yeah, I really couldn't hold it, so in the third hour, I really had to go, and then they will have a computer and fingerprint stuff for the identification, and you have to put your fingerprint and come back also to identify it's real you. I was quite embarrassed because I was the only person who visited the toilet. So, yeah.
Well, maybe there's some strategy that somebody else listening to this could let us know. But yeah, so you say that they fingerprinted you as you left, and then they made sure you were the same person when you came back.
Yeah.
So we'll start with talking about the listening section. So what are a few of the things that you wanted to share, Hoi?
So when the listening starts, that you're allowed to read the test paper. So just flip all the pages and get a general idea about what you're going to do first, just like spend 10 seconds. And then, to me, I think it's really useful to find out the section which contains most text. Because if, while you're listening, you can't really pay attention on reading if it contains a lot of text, and you don't know where you're going to focus while you listen to the tape. So I think it's best to spend a lot of time reading on the sections with the most amount of words. Yeah.
Very good advice. Now, this is typically section 3 or section 4.
Yeah, for those section 1 and 2, you don't have to look into the question that detailedly. Just get a rough idea of what you need to know, what kind of information you need to capture. Say, usually the first section is about some personal details, like getting a flat or joining the library, and then they will ask you your personal details, and so it's really quite straightforward. And you prepare that while you'll be given some time just right before the start of the listening, and it will be every conversation will be break up. I think the first session, second session, and the third session will be break up by 2 parts.
Right.
And just use that time, just reading, do a quick scan for all the questions, and try to predict the answer so that you can get the precise image about the questions, that what you are going to answer. Otherwise, you just lightly read through the questions. Actually, you don't know what you're going to do about it. So I found that I roughly, make a guess about the answers. I could get more than 50% of chance the right answer. It's pretty common sense. Like, use your imagination and imagine what kind of situation is about the conversation.
Mm-hmm. And I think this applies to the very first visual example that you've included here, doesn't it?
Yeah, the first visual example is that, so what I'm showing here is an expedition across Atora Mountains, and then prepare for the trip. So probably a map, or you can write it down, a map. Above that, don't write next to it because it can mess up with your answer, so don't do that. So write somewhere else, maybe a map or a pair of shoes, or mountain shoes or anything, and so you know what it's gonna be about. When the answer, when you listen to the answer, you get a very strong impression about the answer. You're never going to forget that.
I see. So that's interesting too, because you actually guess something in your mind, and for you even pencil it down, and that sort of gets you into the zone of listening for some sort of object that you would be preparing, or that you would have to have with you when you go on this sort of trip. So even though that, you're probably miles off from what the real answer is, you're in kind of the general feeling of what the type of response is going to be.
Yeah. And what that's the 13th number, 13. Climb highest peak in. So I didn't pay attention to the preposition in. So I thought that would be a height. And actually, it's gonna be a place,
Yes.
a place's name. So also watch out the connection. So don't, although you try to familiarize yourself with the questions, also pay attention to the prepositions, and that will help you out, getting the correct answer.
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful example that you've shared here, because if we look at question 11, so the question is preceded by an article, so we know that it's going to be a noun of some kind. Total length of the trip, we know this is going to be a number, and as you pointed out, the preposition in, this lets us know that it's going to be a place. So yeah, there's lots of little cues there that are helping us predict what the answer could be. So Hoi, for each of these questions, were you writing little predictions?
Yeah. Don't write next to it, because like I wrote one time a place, and I thought, and then the answer was said, for example, say HSBC, okay, and then HSBC place, and it could make sense sometimes. So you can scramble up your prediction and the right answer. So that could be dangerous. So right far apart from the answer, and then you won't get yourself mess up with yourself.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. You might get into the zone where you're actually putting your prediction into part of the question in some strange way.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to talk with you about some of these other points that you've brought up. You talk about using abbreviations. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So when you take notes, just use you can use abbreviation. You don't have so much time to write down everything. For example, meter, just write M. Like for minute, hour, just H. But do remember that I'm not a native speaker. Plurality is really important. I'm not so sure it's marked or not, but I found that a lot of time I didn't really pay attention to the S, and I missed out the S, and that could become a wrong answer.
Are you talking about, for example, if the answer were 10 seconds?
10 seconds, obviously it's plural, you will know, but sometimes for example, students, and you just miss out the S. I think it could be marked as wrong. I'm not so sure, I'm not a marker. So I want to go for the next graph, the next image picture. So you can see there are four. There's a lady who has a suitcase with her, and when you listen to the tape, you hear something, but if you haven't familiarized with all these four pictures, you don't really know what are the real difference between different images, different pictures. So one time I did this exercise, I didn't know what I should have pay attention to. So if you see this kind of pictures, that they have a very tricky difference between among them. So spot out what are the difference. Like for example, A and D, they look very similar. It's very far away for A and D, and it actually took me a lot of time to figure out what's the train is not there. So while I was able to figure out the difference between them, the answer has already gone. It's already forgotten what the tape said.
What's your strategy here, Hoy? Do you make mental notes in the four images, or do you circle things?
Just circle what are the differences.